Namaskar. Hello, friends. Live a spiritual life. Spiritual pursuit requires a fundamental transformation of self. Spiritual pursuit, simply stated, should mean pursuing spirit. In other words, it should consist of not pursuing the physical. As a rule, most of us spend our lives in pursuing physical objects and comforts. So, if one gets a desire to go spiritual, one must do a complete 180 degrees turnaround from physical to spiritual. That is the kind of transformation necessary for getting seriously onto a spiritual path. If I want to reach some particular place on the east, can I keep walking towards the west? No, I must walk towards the east, unless I want to rely on the roundness of the earth, which will indeed enable me to reach that place eventually if I live that long. Similarly, if a seeker is seeking the spirit, he cannot continue walking the same old worldly path. He has to reverse his direction and start walking towards the spirit, which is in a direction opposite to the physical world. This reversal of direction is basically on the mental plane. The direction of the external life is immaterial. When we are living like a normal worldly person, our whole life's focus is on the following concerns and the related activities. 1. Satisfaction of one's own sensual and egoistic desires. 2. Ensuring one's own physical comforts. 3. One's own financial concerns. 4. One's own health and life or death. 5. Concern for the family members' well-being. And 6. The welfare of neighborhood, community, country, mankind, etc. But when we get the desire to pursue the spiritual path, we need to consciously work towards gradually reducing these concerns and finally giving them up altogether. It does not mean we should not do anything in respect of these aspects of our existence, but it certainly means that our mind should not remain unnecessarily preoccupied all the time with these matters as it was earlier. As normal worldly human beings, our inner world is simply an image of the external physical world. However, if and when we want to pursue spirituality, our inner world has to be transformed. It has to stop reflecting the external physical world. Its mirror has to be turned away from the physical world towards the metaphysical. In other words, the transformation required is fundamentally in our inner world. Having said that, it is also necessary to understand that our inner world cannot get transformed unless our way of living in the external physical world also changes significantly and substantially. Many people believe that it is enough if one changes one's way of looking at the external physical world and life in general, and then one can continue living one's life as in the past. While this proposition sounds attractive, one has to be careful that such an exercise does not become only an intellectual one. Otherwise, it may simply amount to self-deception. Moreover, that kind of approach to spirituality is unlikely to achieve any real spiritual goal of experiencing the metaphysical. It may simply enable one to attain some kind of mental peace and an even-mindedness towards life, but nothing much more than that. Hence, I believe if one wants to taste the real fruit of spirituality in the form of actually experiencing the spirit, then one has to consciously make efforts towards a real inner transformation, and that is greatly helped by first working towards a transformation in one's external life. Now, how should one proceed towards that goal of transforming external life? We should keep our own personal needs to the bare minimum so that the need for the related activities also remains minimum. As regards concerns for others' well-being, it helps to tell oneself that the big picture is being looked after by the Creator, and I don't have to concern myself primarily with that. After all, everyone is anyway trying to take care of himself or herself. So why should we burden ourselves with the welfare of others? Again, we may do something on that front from time to time as per our desire and the demands of the situation. But it is not necessary to keep worrying about it or to proactively indulge in a lot of activity on that front. True spiritual pursuit can begin only after one comes to a firm mental formation that he has nothing to get from this physical world. So long as one hasn't reached that stage, one is always drawn to the world. It is not enough to simply reduce the number of things one is interested in. Even if one has only one interest, it will occupy the whole mind, like air filling all the available space. And as I always like to clarify, having no interest in the world does not quite entail leaving home and family and going into the forest. Rather, it is something at the mental level. Worldly things should no longer drive my thoughts and actions, even while continuing to live among family and friends and carrying on the normal bodily activities. That is true vairagya or detachment. If we can keep this firmly in mind, we will gradually achieve the 180-degree turnaround towards spiritual. Nurture a spiritual view of life. For me, spirituality is the correct way of life for fulfilling all the purusharthas, that is, life mission for a human being, in the righteous way sanctioned by the spirit of the scriptures as interpreted and applied to the times I am living in. Through the first three purusharthas, namely dharma, artha and kama, I am essentially rooted in the physical world of sense objects, performing various actions towards fulfilling bodily desires, satisfying my ego, acquiring worldly possessions, etc. This activity should be carried on in God consciousness, in the sense that I should firmly hold in my mind that whatever I am doing is simply an offering to the Creator in the fulfillment of His grand scheme. In other words, I must not think that the action I am performing, for instance cooking and eating food, is simply for satisfying my bodily hunger or the taste buds, but rather it is for maintaining my body towards performance of the divine duties assigned by the Creator to this mind-body object that I consider as myself. While engaged in this pursuit, I must exercise vivek, that is balanced discriminatory thought that weighs the various options and shows the most appropriate course of action in every situation. This enables me to fulfill reasonable desires in an honest way without causing loss or harm to others, as also to share the fruits of my efforts with others in the society needing support. As against this approach during the first three purusharthas, I must take a 180-degree turn for the fulfillment of the last purushartha, namely moksha. I must discard my worldly rootedness that characterized my living thus far and instead adopt a completely God-oriented approach. By God, I mean the concept of the creator, sustainer, and destroyer of the world of objects. which is beyond the normal understanding and comprehension of our five bodily senses and intelligence. The attainment of moksha means basically ridding oneself of all the worldly desires and fears and contemplating all the time about all that is before and after this world of physical objects. The moksha purushartha stands apart from the other three in the sense that it acknowledges that this world of physical objects and my existence in it as a mind-body organism is not the only thing that one needs to know, but there is something that is before and beyond it that is responsible for creating, sustaining and destroying this mind-body object as also other animate and inanimate objects of this world. The latter knowledge is much more important, and one must strive to gain and internalize it during one's life as a human being so that he transcends the physical world. As per Indian scriptures, one does not get released from the cycle of births and deaths until one successfully fulfills the moksha purushartha in his life, which will then be his last. Let life happen rather than making it happen. The main aspect of spiritual pursuit is that we are required to progressively turn away from the physical world so that we can realize our original true self as a soul once again. For this, we need to consciously reduce our worldly desires as much as possible. Since there are few desires, if at all, the mind does not need to engage in action plans for future, nor in analyzing the past. But it is not very easy for our mind to switch from a very active mode to a rather quiet state. The mind therefore starts fixing some objective even for a spiritual pursuit so that it can engage in its favorite game of planning for actions. This again defeats one of the important purposes of spiritual pursuit, which is to quieten our mind. That is why it is important to tell ourselves that there is no objective of my spiritual pursuit. It is not a physical target which is somewhere far away from me, and it is not as if I have to reach there with my physical body, nor as if it is a fruit at the top of a tree. I have to reach it and eat it so that it becomes a part of me. The spiritual pursuit is actually discarding all that we have been engaged in thus far, so that what will then remain is simply our true form, our true identity. Life is a journey on a circular path. You have to inevitably return to the same point from where you started. The objective behind this journey is to go through the experiences along the way in a purely witness mode. But we tend to get attracted to many diversions away from the circular path, thereby extending our journey unnecessarily. You have to return to the starting point anyway. So wisdom lies in understanding this and letting the life take its own course without mentally resisting the course or unnecessarily exerting to change the course. Now, the above does not mean you will be inactive. So long as you are living in this world, the divine will use your existence for some purpose of his. A body with prana, that is life energy, inside it can never remain without activity. So why not let the divine will prevail and take you through the rest of your life in its own way? Let my existence be like a lotus plant. The lotus plant has its roots inside the water, but just under the surface, drawing nourishment from water. Its leaves are in touch with water, but are above the water and are not wetted by the water. Lotus flower is up above the water, exposed to free air and sunshine. As a spiritual seeker, I should aim to make my existence like a lotus plant. Let my body be like the roots of the lotus plant, inside the water of the physical world, but just so as to draw nourishment and sustenance for itself. Let my mind be like the lotus leaf, just in touch with the physical world, but above it and not affected by it. Let my lotus plant of existence flower into self-realization that is completely above the physical world, enjoying the free air and sunshine in the form of Sat Chit Anand. I will stop here and I'll see you the next time. Until then, bye, take care.